As I glanced at my phone, Tyler's name flashed across the screen. The conference room buzzed with conversations, but the moment felt strangely still. Assuming it was one of his typical check-ins, I stepped out into the corridor, bracing myself for the usual exchange. "How's your trip? When will you be back home?" But his voice, aloof and detached, immediately unsettled me. With an almost jubilant tone, he cut through any pleasantries. "I'm divorcing you," he said. His next words landed like blows. "You'll need to find a new place to live. I've already sold the apartment. Have fun with that." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The audacity of it, the complete absence of remorse in his voice, it almost felt absurd, like some poorly scripted scene from a movie. My grip tightened around the phone as his words began to sink in. "You sold the apartment?" I asked, forcing an even tone, though my chest felt like it might explode. Yes," he replied casually, followed by a dry laugh. "Nicole and I need the money to start fresh. Besides, she deserves better than such a cramped place." "Nicole?" The name hit me like a punch. For months, I had suspected there was someone else. Tyler's sudden work trips, late nights, the increasing emotional distance between us. But hearing her name out loud, so casually, made it all feel excruciatingly real. It was as if I had somehow trespassed on their lives, not the other way around. "That sounds good," I responded, my voice unnervingly steady. I refused to give him the satisfaction of hearing me fall apart. My name is Amelia, and until that moment, I believed I had married a man I could trust. Taylor and I had been together for 6 years, and though our relationship wasn't perfect, I believed in us. We had worked hard to buy that apartment, a cozy 2-bedroom in the city that had stolen my heart the moment I saw it. It wasn't just a place to live, it was a testament to everything we had built together, or so I thought. That's what I had assumed anyway. In retrospect, there had been indications. I had disregarded minor fissures in the foundation. Tyler's willingness to dismiss my questions regarding money with a quick kiss and a lovely grin any time I brought up the subject. I had always thought that his self-assurance stemmed from his expertise. I now understood that it was because he knew he could control me. The remainder of the day flew by. My mind was racing as I sat through client meetings, nodding at the appropriate times. Tyler believed he had won. He believed he could take advantage of me, sell the house I had worked so hard to earn, and get away with it. He was unaware of one important element, though. For months, the apartment deed had only been in my name. After we refinanced earlier in the year, Tyler had consented to the transfer without giving it much thought, because it would result in a reduced interest rate. He had never bothered to read the documents he had signed, or inquire about the specifics. His negligence will prove to be his downfall. My shock had given way to resolve by the time I got back to my hotel room that night. I refused to weep or plead. Tyler desired a brawl? All right, but I was going to prevail in this battle. I called my old friend and lawyer, Chloe, first. With a steady voice, despite my racing heart, I painstakingly explained the scenario. "Did he sell the apartment?" Incredulous, she repeated. "Is he even aware that he needs your permission to do it?" "Apparently not," I answered, my tone tinged with amusement. "He believes that his new life with Nicole has already cost him the money." Chloe gave a dry laugh. "He's going to have a harsh awakening then. The transaction is void. You can demonstrate sole ownership, and he is liable for fraud if he has stolen any money from the buyer." I felt a surge of satisfaction when I heard the word fraud. "What must we accomplish?" I inquired. Adam to Chloe, "We will first inform the buyer that the sale is illegal. After that, we'll write Tyler an official letter explaining the repercussions of his behavior. We will bring him to court if he is foolish enough to do anything else." I experienced an odd feeling of calmness as I hung up. Tyler believed he had outwitted me and had left me fumbling and helpless. In actuality, though, he had just prepared himself for the worst possible humiliation. For the remainder of the trip, I concentrated on my work, putting my feelings aside and directing my attention onto the task at hand. The idea of taking back my life and seeing Tyler's arrogance fall apart gave me a sense of purpose that I hadn't experienced in months, even though the betrayal still stung. I was prepared when I got on the plane to go home, all set to take on Tyler, all set to destroy his falsehoods, and prepared to begin a new chapter in his absence. Winning wasn't the only goal here. It was about regaining authority. I had hours to reflect on how everything had fallen apart throughout the ride home. Tyler was incredibly conceited. He hadn't even made an effort to conceal his betrayal, treating me as just another roadblock to be destroyed on his way to liberty. But rather than losing my temper, I concentrated on what I would do when I got back. Tyler believed I had no options, but he was unaware that I had been playing the long game. My first call was to Chloe when the plane landed. As I dragged my suitcase off the luggage carousel, I declared, "I'm back. What will happen next?" With a quick and effective tone, she responded, "We've already informed the buyer." They weren't thrilled with Tyler and were, to put it mildly, stunned. Our argument is strengthened by their willingness to cooperate. "Tyler too?" I inquired. "This morning, I emailed him the official letter," she stated. "It describes your exclusive ownership of the residence, the illegality of the sale, and the possible repercussions of fraud. Although he hasn't replied yet, I'm going to assume that he is going to be quite upset." Well, I thought, give him time to stew. The flat was oddly silent when I got home. Tyler's belongings remained. The area felt different, as if the vibe had changed, even though his shoes were haphazardly thrown by the door and his jackets were sprawled over the chair. Knowing that the encounter would arrive soon enough, I took a big breath and put my suitcase down. As expected, Tyler stormed in that evening, his phone clenched in his palm and his face flushed with rage. "What on earth is this?" He waved the letter Chloe had sent and yelled, "Are you implying that I am unable to sell the apartment? I own half of it." I crossed my arms and answered quietly, "No, it isn't. For months, the deed has been in my name. Nothing you don't own can be sold." His face was a mix of anger and bewilderment as he froze. "What are you discussing?" I took the deed out of the file I had previously pulled and held it up to him. "I had the deed changed to my name following our refinance. Remember how you signed off on it? Or did you simply scan the documents as you always do?" He remained silent for a minute. Then a grimace contorted his expression. "Don't you think you're really intelligent? Nothing is altered by this. When everything goes wrong, you're going to appear foolish since I already struck a bargain." I fixed my unwavering gaze on him. "Tyler, the sale is already null and invalid. The buyer is aware of this, and should you fail to refund the money, they are prepared to file a lawsuit. You're in significantly more trouble if you've spent even a single cent of that deposit." For the first time, Tyler's confidence faltered. He avoided looking at me and whispered, "You don't know what you're talking about." "Oh," I answered steadily, "I know exactly what I'm talking about. You've been treating me as though I'm too innocent to see what you're doing for years. Tyler, you know what? I've been listening, and now you'll have to face the repercussions." His irritation grew, and he began to pace. "This is absurd. Everything is being exaggerated by you. You can't simply leave me here." I arched an eyebrow. "I can, in fact. Legally, I own this place. You're welcome to remain here for the time being, but only because I'm giving you some leeway to consider your options. Let me clarify, though. I will not be leaving." Tyler's rage evolved into desperation throughout the course of the following few days. He kept calling me and left hysterical voicemails that alternated between threats and entreaties. Behind the scenes, Chloe made sure that all the loose ends were tied up. Enraged at Tyler for squandering their time and money, the buyer canceled the deal and Chloe prepared the initial divorce documents. Then a grimace contorted his expression. "Don't you think you're really intelligent? Nothing is altered by this. When everything goes wrong, you're going to appear foolish since I already struck a bargain." I fixed my unwavering gaze on him. "Tyler, the sale is already null and invalid. The buyer is aware of this, and should you fail to refund the money, they are prepared to file a lawsuit. You're in significantly more trouble if you've spent even a single cent of that deposit." For the first time, Tyler's confidence faltered. He avoided looking at me and whispered, "You don't know what you're talking about." "Oh," I answered steadily, "I know exactly what I'm talking about. You've been treating me as though I'm too innocent to see what you're doing for years. At one of our sessions, she informed me, "You're in a good position, Amelia. Tyler is powerless in this situation. He will need to comply if he wishes to prevent a more serious situation, given the canceled transaction and the fraud allegations that are looming over him." Although I was relieved by her words, I was also reminded of how much I had let Tyler rule my life. I'd put up with his contempt and haughtiness for years, telling myself it wasn't worth the struggle. But now that I realized how much I had been sacrificing, I was resolved to regain everything. One evening, Laura and my closest buddy came over to assist me with organizing the place. We carefully stacked Tyler's belongings in the living room corner after boxing them up. "How is he handling everything?" She smirked and held up one of his flashy ties as she asked. With my heart racing but my resolve unwavering, I got to my feet. "No," I answered firmly. "Tyler had been staying here. Nicole, you're not going to stay here at all." She looked at Tyler, who appeared just as shocked, and her smile wavered. "What is this?" He made a demand. "This is my home," I remarked, pointing to the apartment surrounding me. "Not her hotel, not yours, and definitely not a place for you to stay after you stab me in the back." Nicole's face froze, but she remained silent. Tyler, however, appeared on the verge of exploding. "This is impossible," he yelled. "You're crazy." Unflinching, I looked him in the eye. "No, Tyler. The idea that you could sell my house, take the proceeds, and expect me to just roll over is absurd. You're fortunate that I haven't yet brought any criminal accusations." Nicole crossed her arms and appeared more uneasy as Tyler stood at the doorway, his face flushed with annoyance. With a desperate tone, he said, "Amelia, you're being ridiculous. I can't be evicted from my own house." I stepped forward and spoke in a steady but calm tone. "Tyler, this is my home. You are aware that the deed has been in my name for several months. As usual, you didn't even read the paperwork before signing it. Therefore, no, this is no longer your home." Nicole's immaculately manicured palm tightened around the strap of her purse as she looked at Tyler. "Hold on, what is she discussing?" Her tone was stern as she inquired. "You claimed to have sold this apartment and that it was yours." He winced, attempting to dismiss her. "It's not easy. I'll take care of it." "Oh," I remarked, taking a step closer. "It's not complicated. You attempted to sell an apartment that is not yours. Tyler, that sale is null and void. Furthermore, you currently lack a leg to stand on." Nicole lost her temper. "Do you mean the cash you claim to have?" Her voice rose as she paused in the middle of her statement. "God forbid! Did you also lie about that?" "Let me explain, Nicole," Tyler said hastily, raising his hands. "She wouldn't have it, though." "No," I interrupted him. "Let me clarify. Tyler believed he could keep the money and leave me with nothing, so he attempted to sell the apartment behind my back. He was unaware that I had the deed changed to my name several months prior. He therefore committed fraud by feigning to be able to sell it, in addition to failing to do so, like a fish struggling to breathe." Nicole's mouth opened and closed. "Are you serious?" I crossed my arms and answered, "Yes, fraud. And if he doesn't get his belongings and depart by the end of the day, I'm ready to file charges." At last, Tyler's facade broke. "Amelia, you can't do this," he pleaded, his voice suddenly begging. "Can't just toss me out after 6 years of dating," I responded, stiffening my voice. "You threw me out the moment you made that phone call. You laughed when you said you were divorcing me and that I would have to move. Tyler, you attempted to destroy me, not just betray me. Therefore, don't just stand there and seem to be the victim." Nicole stepped back again, her gaze flitting between us. She gripped her purse more tightly and whispered, "This is crazy. Tyler, you didn't tell me any of this. You claimed to have everything under control." His expression was filled with desperation as he turned to face her. "I can fix this, Nicole. All I need is—" She lifted a hand to interrupt him. "Just don't. I refuse to be involved in your mess." He was shocked as she turned on her heel and walked out without saying another word. As the door clicked behind her, I couldn't help but smile. Turning back to Tyler, I remarked, "Looks like you're on your own. Let's now discuss what comes next." His face was buried in his hands as he sagged onto the couch. "Please, Amelia, I made a mistake. I am aware of that. However, you are not required to do this." I picked up a folder from the kitchen counter and placed it on the coffee table in front of him, saying, "You're right. I will do this even though I am not required to. The divorce documents are here. It has already been prepared by my lawyer. Therefore, I advise you to sign it right away. We can both move on sooner if you do it sooner." His face was white as he gazed at the folder. "Do you truly despise me that much?" "Hate you?" I laughed resentfully. "I don't hate you, Tyler. I'm sorry for you. You had a home we made together, someone who loved you and everything, but you tossed it all away because you were only interested in yourself." With my heart racing but my determination unwavering, I stood. "By the end of the day, I want you to leave. Gather your belongings and choose a place to stay. I will not be showing you any more grace after this." His shoulders slumped in defeat as he opened his mouth to argue but stopped. "All right," he whispered. "I'll leave." "Good," I murmured as I moved to the door. "Additionally, don't even consider attempting anything else. The next time you cross a line, I won't think twice about letting the courts handle it, because Chloe is already taking care of everything." Tyler rose up slowly and grabbed his coat as I opened the door. His footsteps were laden with defeat as he left without glancing at me. I briefly experienced sadness, not for him, but rather for the life we might have had if he had been the person I believed him to be. However, that time was swiftly over and was replaced with relief. Using the new key I had produced, I locked the door after him. Now this was my home, and nobody would ever take it away from me, not even Tyler. After Tyler went, there was an overwhelming silence in the flat. I felt like I could breathe for the first time in years. His presence, his entitlement, and his lies no longer made the room feel heavy. It was only me, the house I had created, and the silent knowledge that I had triumphed, not only over him, but also over all of my self-doubts. Observing the empty space where his belongings had been, I stood in the center of the living room. The garish coffee table he had insisted on keeping, the framed jerseys that had covered the walls, and his enormous gaming chair were all gone. The place appeared brighter, cleaner, and like it belonged to me once more. That night, Lauren stopped by with a bottle of wine and takeout. "Is he truly gone?" With a dramatic sigh, she plopped down on the couch and asked. I poured 2 glasses of wine and remarked, "Gone and not coming back." I allowed him to pack his belongings till the end of the day. He didn't dispute. Lauren held up her glass. "To new beginnings and merited triumphs." The burden of the previous week began to gradually fade as I clinked my glass against hers. To never again allow someone to walk all over me. I started reclaiming the apartment piece by piece over the course of the following few days. I relocated my favorite piece of art into the living room, rearranged the furniture, and stocked the room with items that brought me joy. Redecorating wasn't the only thing involved. The goal was to make the apartment represent who I was, rather than the person Tyler had attempted to mold me into. With the assurance that made me feel unstoppable, Chloe called to provide updates on the court case. She clarified that the divorce paperwork is proceeding without incident, but the fraud accusations are off the table because the buyer chose not to pursue them. Tyler's signature will formally release you. My chest constricted as I heard the word free. The divorce wasn't the only issue. It had to do with everything I had been holding on to for years. The feelings of self-doubt, bitterness, and being stuck in a marriage that didn't appreciate me were all finally going away. Tyler made several attempts to get in touch. His messages ranged from pitiful attempts to guilt me into making amends to flimsy apologies. One read, "I was wrong. Why don't we at least discuss this?" One was more desperate. "Amelia, you're going to ruin me. Do you want it that way?" I didn't respond. I wasn't going to expend energy on trying to fix something that was irreparably damaged for once. He was now coping with the repercussions of his decisions. The apartment felt like a brand new place by the end of the week. Warm, welcoming, and totally mine. With a cup of tea and the city lights sparkling outside the window, I sat on the couch and reflected on everything that had transpired. In addition to being shocking, Tyler's betrayal had served as a wake-up call. I'd allowed myself to think for too long that I didn't deserve any better, and that I had to be content with whatever meager amount of love and respect he chose to give me. But I was wiser now. I was taking back not just my apartment, but also. After a month, everything in my life changed drastically. Because of the way it felt, rather than any significant renovations, the apartment was completely different. It was a place that represented who I was, my preferences, my character, and my newly discovered independence. The house felt lighter and more liberated without Tyler's mess and his intrusive presence. Everything was going well with the divorce. Tyler had no room to argue or make things more difficult because Chloe had handled everything precisely. Realizing he had no leverage, he signed the papers without much fanfare. There was no dramatic confrontation or heartfelt appeal to resolve the conflict. Just a crisp, cold break that was incredibly fulfilling and bittersweet. I once found a picture of Tyler and me from our early years together while going through some old documents. With our arms wrapped around one another, we were grinning and full of promise and hope. For a moment, I gazed at it, allowing the memories to envelop me. There had been happy times when I genuinely thought we were creating a future together. However, years of disregard, deceit, and treachery eclipsed those moments. I placed the picture in a drawer after tucking it into an envelope. I wasn't prepared to discard it, but it wasn't worth keeping in the open either. Although it was a part of my past, I no longer identified with it. Lauren and I went to a hip rooftop bar downtown for dinner and drinks to celebrate the divorce's finalization. She raised her cocktail in a toast and remarked, "You look radiant. You're good at living alone." I laughed, experiencing a warmth I hadn't experienced in a long time. I said, "It's not the single life, it's the liberty. I don't feel like I'm living by someone else's rules for the first time." We raised a glass to that, and as the evening wore on, I began to feel more and more proud of myself. I had persevered through one of the most trying times in my life. I wasn't only getting by, I was doing well. I began making plans for the future as I got home. The flat was no longer only a haven, it represented everything I had taken back. However, I knew I wouldn't remain there indefinitely. I would eventually relocate to a new location free of the memories of my time spent with Tyler. Until that moment, I resolved to embrace every fleeting second in the space I had fought so hard to hold on to. That night, as I curled up on the couch, a surprising sense of calm washed over me. The warm glow of the room seemed to wrap me in a quiet reassurance, a stark contrast to the chaos Tyler had tried to leave in his wake. I remembered his smug chuckle during that fateful phone call, so convinced he'd won the upper hand. But as I sat there, I couldn't help but smile. His arrogance had been his undoing, and my quiet resolve had been my victory. This wasn't merely the end of a marriage. It was the start of something far more powerful. For the first time in years, I saw the world with new eyes. This was the beginning of my story, one where I dictated the plot, where I carved out my happiness on my own terms. That night, I realized something liberating. I was no longer trapped by the past. I was finally free. If you want to explore more captivating stories like this one, be sure to subscribe to SoraBook. There's so much more to discover in the next videos, and you won't want to miss a single moment.